It's 10 o'clock. This is Sky News at 10. Our top story. Defensive walls prove no match for lava flows, destroying homes after Iceland's second volcanic eruption in less than a month. 5 people die while scrambling in dark, icy waters, trying to board small boats to cross the Channel from France. Thousands rally in London to support Israel, marking 100 days of war in Gaza, as a Hamas leader casts new doubt over the fate of hostages still held. Police arrest 6 people over what detectives say was a plot by Palestinian activists to disrupt the London Stock Exchange tomorrow. Lord Cameron hints at a willingness for further strikes on Houthi rebels in Yemen, telling Sky News doing nothing is no longer an option.
What is happening in the Red Sea is unacceptable, and we've demonstrated very clearly that we back our words, our warnings, with action when it is necessary.
Frederick X is proclaimed King of Denmark after his mother became the first Danish monarch in 900 years to willingly give up the throne. And we'll take a first look at tomorrow's front pages in our press preview from 10:30. Good evening. A volcanic eruption in southwestern Iceland has sent lava streaming towards homes, sending some up in flames. Speaking to the nation tonight, the president urged his country to stand together in the face of tremendous forces of nature. It's the second time in less than a month that volcano has rumbled to life near the small fishing town of Grindavik on the southwestern side of Iceland. 2 volcanic fissures have opened north of the town, breaching defensive walls shown here in orange. The areas shaded here in purple, red and orange are most at risk, according to the Icelandic Met Office. Our science correspondent Thomas Moore reports from Iceland.
The town of Grindavik is at the mercy of Mother Nature. The earth ripped open once again. Fire fountains erupting from a long crack. Lava streaming towards people's homes. For Iceland, this is the most serious eruption in more than 50 years.
When we find ourselves in dire straits, we Icelanders stand together. Without a doubt, the people of Grindavik and all of us hope that this disaster will soon subside, that soon people will be able to return home.
Civil defence teams had been building a protective wall around the town. They had to retreat with their vehicles as the molten rock steadily advanced, but the fortifications seemed to hold back at least some of the lava.
This is as close as we're allowed to go. The eruption is too dynamic, too unpredictable. Magma is continuing to build up beneath the surface, and scientists don't know where it will break through.
A second fissure did open just a few hours after the first eruption, this one on the very edge of town. Houses were engulfed by rock heated to as much as 1,200 degrees. Nothing could save them. 4,000 residents have been evacuated, including Brigitte and her family, all hoping their homes will be spared.
We are all trying our best to keep our plans and our lives as little disrupted as possible, just for ourselves and the children. My 12-year-old daughter, she watches TV and, she knows the people that are staying in these houses. It's absolutely heartbreaking.
This is the second eruption in as many months from the volcano just 20 miles from Iceland's capital.
This peninsula, where we have a good portion of the Icelanders living, it is awakening from a sleep that's about 800 years long, and we might expect volcanic activity and earthquake activity for years and decades ahead.
The mayor of Grindavik has said the situation is ominous. Damage is already considerable, and it's likely to get a lot worse.
Let's cross now to Thomas Moore, who's in Keflavik in Iceland for us tonight. And Thomas, is this latest eruption the most serious that we've seen so far?
Yes, the people of Iceland have been living alongside volcanoes for hundreds of years, and there have been some catastrophic eruptions in the past, but it's rare in modern times for a whole town to be at the mercy of the magma. Now, there are signs that the eruption may be decreasing this evening, but this is changing by the hour, and there's no way of being certain what the situation will be tomorrow. This isn't about people's lives. They're all safe. They've been evacuated. It's not really just about their homes either. This is a whole community that has been built up over many generations, and now that is at risk.
Thomas, thank you very much. Of course, you keep us updated throughout the course of the evening. 5 people have died in icy waters off a French beach while trying to reach small boats to cross the channel. It's happened ahead of crunch votes in the Commons this week on legislation for the government's stalled Rwanda policy. Our Europe correspondent Adam Parsons reports from Wimereux in northern France.
The early hours of the morning, and in the darkness of the North French coast, a rescue operation. In the waters beyond this seaside town, dozens of people are being brought ashore from a migrant boat. The Coast Guard is coordinating. A rescue helicopter lands, but 4 bodies have been recovered and a 5th will be found in the morning. And so begins another year of perilous small boat journeys between France and Britain.
It breaks my heart to hear about it, but it just shows we've got to stop the boats. We've got to stop this illegal trade in human beings.
Off the coast, French patrol boats remain vigilant. After a long lull in these migrant crossings, they've now started again. The government said over 120 people arrived in Britain on small boats on Saturday. Those who died set off from this coastline. It's a familiar routine on nights when the sea is calm. People hiding in the dunes, then running down across the beach carrying a boat, setting off towards Britain. It used to be that migrant boats didn't make this crossing during the winter, but over the past couple of years that has changed. Now, this vessel got into difficulty not far from the shore, but those who went into the water discovered that it was exceptionally cold, only 9 degrees, and hypothermia set in rapidly. Thierry was out walking with his family when we met. He's lived in this region for decades and says he often sees groups of migrants on these beaches.
No, we're not angry, we're sad. It's not right seeing situations like this. Families, young people who are trying to cross, who are taking such risks, risking their lives to get to England. No, we're not angry, we're sad. We're sorry.
The number of people crossing the channel in small boats fell by a third last year. The French police are more active, but the boats are bigger. And this migrant route retains a huge political and humanitarian resonance. It's inevitable that once in a while, the story of cross-channel migration will include the horror of death. It's just that this year, the tragedy has come early. Adam Parsons, Sky News, Wimereux.
6 people have been arrested over what the Metropolitan Police describe as a plot by pro-Palestinian activists to disrupt the London Stock Exchange tomorrow. The group involved says it won't be deterred. Sky's Ashna Horanag is here to tell us a bit more about this story. So first of all, how did this plot come to light?
Well, information regarding this plot was passed on to the Metropolitan Police by the Daily Express newspaper, alleging that activists from the Palestine Action Group intended to target the London Stock Exchange tomorrow morning, including things like climbing onto the revolving doors of its entrance, armed with red paint, causing disruption and damage, allegedly to stop the building from opening and trading. We're talking about one of the most valued stock exchanges here across Europe, as well as climbing on doors, chaining their necks to the entrance, firing red fake banknotes from money guns as well. But following that tip-off, a number of arrests have been made this morning, including a man and 2 women arrested in Liverpool on suspicion of conspiracy to cause criminal damage. And a man and a woman in London have also been arrested on the same charge, and a man in Brighton too, all allegedly involved in this plot. We've been hearing from the Detective Superintendent Sian Thomas from the Metropolitan Police regarding this. She has said these are significant arrests. We believe the group was ready to carry out a disruptive and damaging stunt, which could have had a serious implication had it been carried out successfully. It looks as though one part of a plan has been foiled, but we have also heard from the group who have said the London Stock Exchange raised billions of pounds for Israel. Our direct action campaign will not be deterred. So a suggestion there that planned action will continue, and that ties in with what the Metropolitan Police say is a heightened awareness. They are coordinating efforts with other police forces across the UK, preparing to take action against further disruption that they expect this week.
OK, Ashna, for the moment, thank you. A Hamas leader has said tonight that the fate of many hostages still held by the group in Gaza is unknown, suggesting a number may have been killed in Israel's offensive. It brings new doubt for the hostages' loved ones, 100 days after Hamas killed 1,200 Israelis, triggering a war in which 23,000 Palestinians have been killed. There were events around the world today in support of Israel, including a rally in London's Trafalgar Square. Sky correspondent Ivor Bennett reports.
Bring them home! Bring them home!
It has become a mantra for Jews and Israelis the world over. 3 simple words: bring them home.
Bring them home! Bring them home!
100 days since the October 7th attacks, and more than 130 hostages remain in captivity. Thousands coming to London's Trafalgar Square to ensure they're not forgotten.
It makes me feel sick. And what's the hardest thing is that I feel like the world is asleep.
I think the world has forgotten the hostages and forgotten how this began.
Among those in captivity is Ayelet Svatitsky's brother Nadav, one of 2 UK nationals still being held.
It's a nightmare that we just can't wake up from. Waking up every morning, trying to, stay hopeful, but we worry.
Is time running out?
I believe so.
Former Home Secretary Suella Braverman was also in the crowd and joined in a 100-second silence.
We need to stand with Israel continually throughout this bitter and cruel and evil conflict.
It's clear there's still a great deal of sympathy for the remaining hostages and all those affected by the October 7th attacks. But that is just one side of the story now, of course. The other is what's happening in Gaza and the fact that Israel now stands accused of genocide in the International Court of Justice. More than 23,000 Palestinians have been killed by Israel's offensive, according to the Hamas-controlled health ministry in Gaza, where today Israeli tanks were seen on the border.
We are fighting a defensive war to bring back the hostages we fear Hamas is raping.
The killing of more than 20,000 Palestinians be counted as defensive?
We are acting in accordance with international law to pursue Hamas. Unfortunately, Hamas has spent the last 16 years cynically embedding its military infrastructure under civilian areas. We have been trying to evacuate, and they have been prevented from evacuating.
But what is condemned by many outside Israel needs no justification by those still missing loved ones. Here in Tel Aviv, another rally demanding the hostages' release. This nation forever altered. Ivor Bennett, Sky News.
The Foreign Secretary has said the lights are flashing red on the global dashboard as he hinted at the government's willingness to keep striking Houthi rebels in Yemen if necessary. And asked by Sky News about the military action leading to a wider Middle East conflict, Lord Cameron said not acting was no longer an option. Our chief political correspondent John Craig reports.
The moment RAF Typhoons took off from Cyprus to attack Houthi targets in Yemen. Since November 19th, there have been 26 attacks on ships in the Red Sea, which the British government says is unacceptable. The crisis in the Middle East has topped David Cameron's agenda as Foreign Secretary. On Sky News, he said the instability in the region was a flashing red light on the global dashboard.
We have sent the clearest possible message to the Houthis that their behaviour is unacceptable. And we've demonstrated that we're prepared to follow words and warnings with action. And that is incredibly important that they understand that. If you don't act against the Houthis in the Red Sea, you're going to see more attacks.
But more airstrikes on Yemen could put the UK at risk of a terror attack, a former spy chief told Sky News.
I mean, if you're talking about sympathetic radicalism and the events in the Middle East now motivating, let's say, domestic terrorism, well, there's a risk there. If you're looking at the Houthis specifically, do they have an infrastructure in the UK, which could be a sort of conspiratorial organisation to mount a terrorist attack? Unlikely. Very unlikely, in my view. But lone wolf-inspired event, yeah, I mean, it must, to an extent, heighten that.
Sir Keir Starmer, who is attending a Jewish Labour movement conference, backed the attacks on the Houthis.
The Labour Party supports that action that's been taken. Whether there'll be further action remains to be seen, and we will judge each operation on its merits. I would expect to be briefed, a Cobra briefing. I'd expect Parliament to be part of the process, but we're going to have to take each of these situations as they evolve.
The Prime Minister can count on broad cross-party support when he makes his common statement, but he's likely to face questions from MPs anxious about a prolonged conflict and the longer-term plan for Middle East peace. While Lord Cameron denied the airstrikes would escalate the Middle East conflict, that's disputed by critics of the British and US action.
Well, our chief political correspondent, John Craig, joins us now from Westminster. And, John, it's shaping up to be a very busy week ahead. What's on the cards?
Bumper week, really. Two big issues. First of all, of course, Prime Minister's statement on those airstrikes on Yemen against the Houthis. And secondly, in the middle part of the week, a two-day battle over the very controversial Rwanda bill. As soon as MPs are back here at the start of the week, it's Home Office questions. So a chance for MPs to tackle the Home Office ministers about the tragedy in the Channel this weekend. Tonight, in a new statement, the Home Office has said that the deaths were devastating, but they also are a reminder of the need, how vital it is to stop the boats. Well, on Tuesday and Wednesday, we've got the committee stage of this very controversial Rwanda bill. And, of course, a battle between the Prime Minister and right-wing Tory MPs, led by the former Immigration Minister, Robert Jenrick, who are calling on the government to put in clauses so the government ignores so-called pyjama injunctions and international treaties and curb the rights of migrants to go to court. Promises to be a pretty huge battle, although the government's confident it can see off the rebellion.
OK, John, thank you. And in the latest edition of the Politics at Jack and Sam's podcast, Sam Coates and Jack Blanchard look ahead to a busy week at Westminster, as we've been saying, including the Rwanda bill returning to the Commons. Scan the QR code to listen or download it wherever you get your podcasts from. It's a bitterly cold week ahead, with Met Office warnings for snow and ice at various times, covering all of Scotland and parts of Wales, Northern Ireland and England. Temperatures will be up to 6 degrees lower than usual for this time of year. Shingi Maurike reports from Wakefield in West Yorkshire.
First came the floods, then the snow. Now the big chill, with Britain bracing itself for a cold snap. In Scotland, they're expecting more snowfall, bringing with it the prospect of disruption and danger. In the Hepworth Museum, one of West Yorkshire's most iconic venues, they've been running a warm space all winter.
This art museum isn't just a creative hub, it's a vital space for people from the area to come and keep warm. On days like this, as the temperature plummets, they're expecting to be busy.
Hello.
For little ones, it's a place for fun and games. For parents, there are other priorities, especially this time of year.
It's very important in the winter, especially because the heating bills and everything, prices going up.
If family have kids, young kids, especially like mine, they just want to make themselves warm.
The museum is expecting more people here as winter begins to bite.
Already we've had upwards of 70 people a week that have been using it, and that's in generally the milder part of the winter that we've had. So I anticipate over the next weeks and months, when we do get that cold snap coming back again, that it will be on the up with people.
The issue isn't just the cold, it's the timing of the temperature drop. coming off the back of extreme weather earlier on in the month.
Certainly with a lot of water on the ground still, a lot of the ground is saturated. With that cold air in place, certainly it enhances the risk of ice, I think, in the coming few days. With so much moisture around, with temperatures dipping below freezing, we could see some fairly widespread icy patches in places over the coming few days.
There are snow and ice warnings in place for the north of Scotland. Parts of the country could see 10 centimetres of snow over 2 days. By tomorrow, those warnings will also spread to Northern Ireland. Cold air from the Arctic will then bring freezing temperatures to places in northwest England and Wales. Further snow showers are likely to cause further travel disruption during Wednesday and Thursday. In a year that started with tricky conditions, we'll see more of the same in what could be a treacherous week for many. Shingi Marike, Sky News, Wakefield.
Well, across the pond, an even deeper Arctic freeze has engulfed swathes of the US, including Iowa, the small state that tomorrow will hold the first big vote of the presidential election. The cold has put the brakes on campaigning by Donald Trump and his rivals, who are vying to become the Republican Party candidate. Our US correspondent Martha Kellner reports.
Even for Iowa, this is cold. A once-in-a-decade storm to mark the start of an election season more bitter than ever. Months of campaigning leads to caucus day, when Republican voters here pick their preferred candidate to be president. Nobody, though, could have prepared for this. Donald Trump included.
Trump 2024!
His arrival in Iowa dishevelled and delayed.
Will the cold affect your voters?
Well, we have a lot of tremendous support, but it's nasty out there.
Are you still confident of a commanding win, Mr. Trump?
Trump is projected to win this state and the nomination easily.
But any predictions are upended in conditions like this. It's the sort of cold where you get frostbite in a matter of minutes, and it's only going to get colder. When people vote, it's forecast to be as low as minus 28 degrees.
In these abject driving conditions, Trump's followers, many of them elderly and rural, could struggle to make it to voting stations. Not Jill, though, an evangelical Christian who will vote for him again.
I'm really into pro-life and pro-country, and I think we need to shut our borders. We're being invaded and we're losing lots of rights.
Does Trump's rhetoric bother you at all?
Of course, nobody likes to hear people speak so disrespectfully, but I also liked what he did and where our country was when he was in office.
Among Trump's closest contenders, Nikki Haley, a former UN ambassador and South Carolina governor.
Governor, is this cold going to work in your favour? Can you beat Donald Trump, Governor?
And Ron DeSantis, the current Florida governor.
Is this a race for second place, sir?
Recent polling suggests the momentum is with Haley, seen by some as a more moderate alternative to Trump.
I think she's probably got the best chance of winning against Biden from what the polls say. Maybe we can close the gap between both sides of the parties and actually make the country better than just spinning our wheels, plowing snow.
Trump's long-standing advisor is managing expectations.
The polls, Jason, as I'm sure you well know, put Donald Trump an average of 35 points ahead of his closest rivals.
Don't go to raise the bar. I'm happy with the win. Just as long a win is a win, we'll be comfortable with that. So don't try to raise the bar on me.
Are you happy with the win, even if it's just a narrow victory, even if it's by 5 points?
Happy with the win.
A thumbs up in Iowa, all the campaigns know is important. Do well here and the momentum can carry a candidate. The question is, whose supporters will brave the deep freeze to reach the ballot box? Martha Kellner, Sky News, Iowa.
Denmark has a new monarch tonight, King Frederik X. He took the throne from his mother, Queen Margrethe, who decided to abdicate on her own terms, something that hasn't happened in Denmark for almost 900 years. Becky Cottrell reports.
Just 2 weeks after a shock announcement that she'd be abdicating, Queen Margrethe II made her way by carriage to hand over power to her son and successor. Prince Frederik, travelling separately by car, waved to the thousands who'd thronged to catch a glimpse of the royal family. They met at Christiansborg Palace, where the Queen signed over the throne to her heir, and with a smile and a nod, it was done. And then came a slightly awkward moment where no one seemed quite sure what to do next. But with a gentle prompt from his mother, the now King Frederick X took up his place at the head of the table and the country. Outside of the palace, they watched and waited. The impressive turnout a sign of the popularity of both the outgoing and incoming sovereign. And then the new king appeared. Breathing deeply and trying to hold back tears. The crowd chanting hurrah. Then he was joined on the balcony by his Australian wife, the now Queen Mary, and their 4 children. At 55 years old, Frederick is not exactly a young monarch, but this is the fresh face of this royal family. And from another, a special message. King Charles wrote, "I look forward to working with you on ensuring that the enduring bond between our countries and our families remains strong, and to working together with you on issues which matter so much for our countries and the wider world." Charles, like his mother, has pledged a lifelong reign. But while for the Windsors the idea of abdication may still conjure up painful memories, in Denmark a new precedent has been set with the country's first abdication in almost 900 years.
Abdication is not particularly rare in Europe because obviously the Dutch royal family, the last 3 monarchs have abdicated, and they have in Belgium and Spain, so it is in Scandinavia, it's quite rare.
And so begins a new reign in Denmark, but the new sovereign has an advantage, with his predecessor still around to pick up the phone. Becky Cottrell, Sky News.
OK, time now to catch up on all the latest sports news with Mark.
This Sky News Sports Bulletin is brought to you by Vitality. Getting more people more active. Live life with Vitality.
Right, Alex Calvin, we've got AFCON around the corner, so thought we'd test out your knowledge with a little African player quiz, all about the Premier League. Alex with a slightly fresher trim today than Calvin. So you already 1-0 up. Yeah, no, look at mine, mine's worse.
You're in it as well, man.
So we'll start off with games played. Just tell me if you could just read out the names actually, one of you that we got there.
Shola Miobi, Wilfred Zaha, Kolo Toure and Cheick Kouyaté.
So who do you think's got the most games played out of them 4? We'll start with you, Calvin, go on.
Zaha for me.
You're going Zaha,
Yeah.
Calvin, Alex?
I'm going to go Kolo.
Kolo, all right, reveal.
Come on, knowledge.
So we got here. We've got yellow cards. So we've got Cheick Kouyaté, Doucouré, Abdoulaye Doucouré, Wolf Zaha, and El Hadj Diouf.
Attacking players, because these 3 are attacking players. It's hard. I'm gonna go Tiote.
Okay.
Because he was a defensive midfielder. He's on that. Yeah, so I'm gonna go Tiote.
Karen.
I think he could shock us, you know. Bro, something's telling me because look, there's referees in each picture. There's no referee there. Yeah. I'm trying to look at it like that. Yeah, I'm trying to look at it like that. I'm gonna say Diouf.
Have a look.
Yeah. Oh, yes. What? I told you, trick question. Look at you going into detail.
No trick questions.
What?
Right, so
you think he'll be a defensive midfielder, but...
Is that 2-0? Goals.
Mohamed Salah, Sadio Mane, Didier Drogba, Emmanuel Adebayo.
Okay, legend there, Premier League legends, top goal scorers. What do you reckon?
Salah? Yeah, I feel like it's going to be more. Yeah. Excellent finish. More Salah. Yeah, more Salah to be fair.
Yeah, both going Mo?
Yeah.
Mo Salah?
Yeah.
There you go, right, 2-2, okay. So we've got assists here. So let me know who we got.
Mohamed Salah, Riyad Mahrez, Didier Drogba, Sadio Mane. I'm going to go Salah again, you know.
Yeah?
I'm going to go Salah again.
Calvin, what you saying?
Because his stats are outrageous. Yeah. But then
Riyad, I'm going Riyad Mahrez.
Have a look.
I knew it. Bro, his stats are outrageous. Lucas Radebe, Joseph Yobo, Lauren, Kolo Toure.
Okay, so what are we thinking? These are clean sheets in the Premier League.
Clean sheets.
Kolo Toure. Invincibles. Yeah, Invincibles. That has to be. I'll be shocked. I'll be shocked. Has to be.
Nah, I'll be fuming.
Yeah, has to be. That was a clean one. He's a legend now.
Yobo. So what? How much of a legend is he? Yobo.
Like, probably one of the best defenders in Nigeria.
Yeah.
If I'm being honest.
you think sometimes players like that can get a little bit forgotten as well? Just like, obviously you guys have played for Nigeria, you go back there, so you know like the kind of legendary names.
It depends on their status, but he will never be forgotten.
And was sent off. Is that red card? The most red cards?
Yeah. So this is most red cards. So yeah, Stephen Pilar, Malumbu, Victor Wanyama.
This Sky News Sports Bulletin is brought to you by Vitality.
Well, that was Sky News at 10. Coming up, we'll take a first look at tomorrow's newspapers in the press preview. Tonight, I'm joined by Stephen Bush, Associate Editor at the Financial Times, and Kate Andrews, Economics Editor at the Spectator. Now, amongst the stories we'll be discussing, this on the front of the Metro, their headline, Stop the Deaths. We'll be right back with that story and many others. Do stay with us if you can.
Breakfast is becoming even brighter here on Sky News. There's a new studio, a new start time of 6 a.m. and some new faces.
OK, yes, we'll bring you all the top stories from around the globe.
And here in Westminster as we count down to an election.
Plus a look ahead to the stories that will be making headlines on Sky News throughout the day.
That's your New Look breakfast show, weekdays 6 to 10 a.m. here on Sky News.
And now it's coming from both sides, and it's moving this way.
Only about half a mile from the Turkish coast, and it's evident that the boat is seriously overcrowded. This is one of the most severe viruses in the world. I'm Alex Crawford, and I'm Sky's special correspondent based in Istanbul.
The biggest party Tripoli has ever seen.
That's it. It got us then. There's a lot of action going on, a lot of hits coming in still. We aim to be the best and the most trusted place in news.
Clearly not had very much to eat at all. A lot of them extremely thin and very frail. Look at her arms. I can put my entire hand round.
This is the cocktail of drugs which the doctors at this hospital have been giving their coronavirus patients. Made for people who want clarity in an uncertain world.
Mother Nature can be vicious, absolutely savage.
The world's largest falls now down to a trickle in places.
I can't imagine how much plastic is lying at the bottom of this huge lake. Whoa!
Close and personal with a rhino.
This is what makes the job so fantastic.
Welcome back. You're watching Sky News. In just a moment, the press preview, a first look at what's on the front pages as they arrive. But first, our top stories. Lava from a new volcanic eruption in Iceland has destroyed a number of homes in the evacuated town of Grindavik. 5 migrants have died off the coast of France, attempting to cross the Channel to the UK. Police investigating a plot to disrupt the London Stock Exchange tomorrow by pro-Palestinian activists have arrested 6 people. You are watching the press preview, a first look at what's on the front pages as they arrive. In the next half hour, we'll see what's making the headlines with the associate editor at the Financial Times, Stephen Bush, and economics editor at the Spectator, Kate Andrews. So let's see what's on some of those front pages for you now. Stop the deaths, writes the Metro about the deaths of 5 people trying to cross the Channel from France. The Eye reports that the UK has been granting asylum to people from Rwanda, despite the government's assurances about the country's safety. While the Times headline reads, top Tories urge Sunak to toughen Rwanda bill. The Telegraph goes with polling, which suggests the Conservatives could be facing a 1997-style election wipeout. The Financial Times has developments in the post office scandal, reporting the government tried to block Fujitsu from new public IT contracts in the early 2010s. Meanwhile, the Mirror runs with calls by former sub-postmasters to see those behind the scandal punished in the courts. Their headline, "We can't let them off the hook." A warning from pharmacists over an unprecedented NHS medicines shortage. That's the front of The Guardian. The Daily Mail's front page has the headline, Queen's fury over naming of baby Lilibet, daughter of Harry and Meghan. The Daily Star suggests travel agents are preparing for an
of bookings as people make plans to escape the impending cold weather.
And a reminder that by scanning the QR code you'll see on screen during the programme, you can check out the front pages of tomorrow's newspapers while you watch us. And we are joined tonight by Stephen Bush and Kate Andrews. Good to see you both. Thank you for coming in. Let's start with the Metro and this extremely depressing story. This is the 5 deaths of people trying to make that channel crossing, the first of this new year. Kate.
Yes, extremely sad. So it was a group of 71 people who were trying to make this crossing, and 5 people have sadly died. People have been counting how many days we've gone without an attempted boat crossing, and it had been some time. There was a 27-day gap. It was the longest in 5 years, but of course, when one was attempted, the first one of the year, we have seen some awful, awful losses. You know, a terrible reminder that the immigration system is not fit for purpose, that for these people who are trying to come over, for almost all of them, there'll be no other pathway to do so. It is an absolute tragedy, and one that the government claims it wants to stop. But if you look at the polls, people don't think that the Tory party or the Labour Party has any real solution to this problem.
And our correspondent in France reporting on this a little earlier was saying that it used to be that the cold weather was an absolute deterrent, but as temperatures plummet, people are still attempting the crossing.
Well, it's partly one of the reasons why the number of crossings fell late last year isn't the weather had been quite bad for some time. And obviously, although most of the people involved in the boats are, you know, obviously they're in the underground economy, they've got to make money like everyone else. So at some point, the risk of crossing versus the fact that, you know, this is a serious industry, you know, means that you do see crossings even in very difficult situations. I think I slightly disagree with you, Kate, though, in that ultimately every country has a measure of illegal or legal migration in or out of it. Before it was boats in this country, it was people coming under lorries. And, of course, people did tragically occasionally die making that journey too. So I don't think it's reasonable to... it's obviously a deeply awful thing that's happened, but this isn't really something any government can stop. Historically, you either have people dying trying to get into your country or out of your country. The mistake has been making this false promise based on the idea that it's something that you can get to zero.
Very quickly on that, I agree with you, Stephen. I think the idea that you could get this to zero is for the birds. It seems near impossible, especially if you don't think you would have the right to come to the UK, say, as an economic migrant.
So you're both saying that this is impossible to stop?
Well, what I would say, I suppose when I said that, what I meant was that there are only a handful of countries right now that you can apply from, or in a different country, to come to the UK. If you are Ukrainian, if you are Afghan, you have legal pathways as a refugee to come to the UK. That is not true for most people in most countries. In order to claim asylum, you have to get to the UK. So I suppose that was the point I was making, that I agree with you, Stephen. I think the idea that boats will ever get to zero is nonsense. Tragically, I think it's just not going to happen. But you could potentially get that number a lot lower if you had more legal pathways.
So, Stephen, what does the government do then? If you're saying that this isn't something that you can stop, how are they supposed to fight it?
Well, I mean, I think what people want, right, is the reassurance that people will either be returned or processed, or then there's a sign that the government has an overall grip of the consequences here in the United Kingdom. I think it's actually probably a much bigger problem politically that you have parts of the country where you have, a hotel which a couple of years ago would have closed down. It's maybe a not very nice part of town. It badly needs renovation. But instead of it being taken over and spruced up a bit, effectively that's become an outsourced arm of migrant processing. So I think then the big thing that I would be doing if I were either of the parties is trying to talk a bit more about what you can control, which is what you do once people get here, rather than wandering around the country with a podium saying stop the boats.
Let's move to the Telegraph, because Rwanda is to be discussed this week in Westminster, and they're looking at the Deputy Chairman backing the Rwanda rebels.
So before Christmas, you had a situation where you had a lot of potential rebels within the Tory party giving big, long speeches about how they were completely opposed to the Rwanda legislation that Rishi Sunak is trying to push through Parliament. And the reason they're opposed to it is they think that they want more amendments because they think there are too many opportunities for illegal migrants to essentially stop these flights, to try to appeal, to try to slow the process down. Nobody actually voted against it in the end, but this is a big week because the main vote is on Wednesday. And the rebels are once again going to try to get some of these harsher amendments through. Here you have Lee Anderson, the deputy chair of the Tory party, suggesting that he might side with the rebels. Now, Rishi Sunak can have about 30 MPs vote against his bill in his party. He can have about 55 abstain and still get this through. But the number of voices saying that they might go to the rebel side is growing louder. Before Christmas, this didn't really pan out. The calls and the claims that people were going to vote against didn't pan out. Could it pan out this time? That's the big question for the government this week.
Stephen, what do you think we're going to see?
I think just as we saw before the Christmas break, when a lot of Conservative rebels have rather grown to like the sound of their own voices, but what they also like is continuing to be Conservative MPs. And the government will do
Which one do they like
and
more?
The government will do exactly what it did before the Christmas break, which is go, guys, if you vote against this, we're having an election in circumstances that I don't think anyone thinks and the Conservatives would be able to win if their opening salvo in their election campaign was, we can't agree among ourselves with a majority of 80, re-elect us. And so, yeah, I think there'll be a lot of kind of people going, oh, it was hard for me to do it, but they'll eventually walk through the division lobbies, just as they did over Maastricht in 1993, just as Labour held together over 90 days detention in the last days of New Labour. This, I think, is basically what happens when a government is getting a bit tired and fractious, is that MPs, many of whom in this case have never held ministerial office, but they haven't known the cold, indifferent world of opposition, enjoying making trouble for themselves. And I think in a couple of months' time, they will look back and feel very silly for having done so. But
let's stay with Rwanda, and quite interesting revelations made by the Eye that 6 people from Rwanda have been granted asylum in Britain since the government signed the deportation agreement with the country in 2022. And this is despite this government saying that Rwanda is safe.
Yes, it's a really remarkable story, but one that should actually not surprise us terribly. I was looking for more details online, and whilst I don't think the article goes into specifically why they've been granted asylum, a lot of it has to do with Rwanda's political system and the fact that it does not necessarily share all of the democratic and human rights values that we value here in the UK. And a lot of people have raised concerns about not just Rwanda and their public policy as a whole, but specifically how they have treated treated refugees in the past, and the fact that we have seen some refoulement in the past. People like to shout down these warnings, but the fact that the UK government itself has granted asylum surely should make everybody pause and think to themselves when we talk about what a safe country is. Simply putting those words more firmly into legislation does not necessarily make it true. It might make it legal in the technical sense, but it's not necessarily going to make it true.
Does this smack of hypocrisy, Steve?
Well, this, I think, smacks of the silliness of the Rwanda scheme, right, which has always been based on this argument that Rwanda is, on the one hand, sufficiently scary than people who are willing to risk their lives to come to this country will go, oh, well, I was fine with drowning in horrible circumstances, but going to Rwanda, that's too awful. But at the same time, Rwanda was safe. Well, it can't be both, right? It either has to be really scary or it has to be safe. And essentially, what stories like this reveal, which we'll have many more, and we've had many in the past, is essentially the government is kind of trying to have it both ways. As the Foreign Office, it says to British citizens, oh, here's things you should say about Rwanda. When it's dealing with refugees and asylum seekers, it goes, oh, yes, of course, you have a claim. And then when we're talking about people coming via the boats, apparently Rwanda's safe. Well, I mean, it's a nonsense, isn't it?
OK, Stephen and Kay, thank you for your views thus far. We're going to take a break. Coming up, more from the front pages, including this in The Guardian. Their headline, NHS drug shortage poses threat to patients' lives. Do stay with us for much more.
You know, 200 years is a really long time. As you said, we're the oldest animal charity. So it's also, when we were founded, it sparked a global animal welfare movement. As you said, these amazing rehoming figures. We've helped millions of animals find homes, be rehabilitated and rescued. But also we've changed 400 laws, and we do a lot of education work as well. We were founded to prevent cruelty and change minds, and that's really been the backbone of everything we've done since we were founded. Well, different in some ways, and still, shamefully, some things are the same. So back then, there's a lot of working animals. So the very first law that was passed was 2 years before we were founded, the Cattle Act. And that was the first time animals were ever protected. But then 11 years after we were founded in 1835, there was an act to ban bull baiting and bear baiting and cockfighting. So these things were just day-to-day entertainments for people. So attitudes have changed hugely. But we are still facing massive challenges. You know, industrial farming is a big issue from the extent of suffering that we see on our farms. And so building a more compassionate farming system is a real focus for us. Our rescue work is vital and it's crucial to what we do. And that will always be a key part of the RSPCA. But as I say, we've changed 400 laws. I don't think people realise how much campaigning we do and how much law changing we do. And that affects millions of animals, not just here, but around the world. So doing that work, we can't do it alone. We need people to support us. We need other organisations and other big charities. These are huge challenges that we're facing. And the more people that join us, the more real and lasting change we can make for animals. Well, do you know what? It's all about being compassionate. And that is a big part of the work that we do. We go into schools and we teach children to be compassionate to animals. And we believe that that helps them be a more compassionate person all round. It helps them understand how their actions affect other people. So, you know, people are animal lovers, but there's space for everyone. That's it. We've seen the long effects of that lots of people, there are far more pets in our society. And we have seen neglect and abandonment figures rise to a 3-year high this year. So more people are sadly abandoning their pets. People are struggling with the cost of living. We have a cost of living hub on our website, which offers advice to help cut the costs while not compromising welfare. And we have a pet food bank scheme as well, which has delivered 1.5 million meals to needy pets this year. So that really helps keep, you know, loving families together with their animals.
Welcome back. You're watching the press preview. Still with me, Stephen Bush, Associate Editor at the Financial Times, and Kate Andrews, Economics Editor at the Spectator. And let's start this section off by having a look at the front of the FT, the Financial Times, and this story about what has been revealed to be named Project Sushi. Kate, tell us what this is about.
This is a great scoop from the Financial Times, discovering that back in 2010 to 2015, during the coalition government, the government was trying to block Fujitsu, which is responsible for the faulty software around the post office scandal, from getting other government contracts because it was repeatedly failing and its software was repeatedly glitching in terms of other government contracts. This is Stephen's paper. I'll let him go into the details, but the bit that really surprised me is that the push was ultimately unsuccessful after government lawyers advised it would not be legally possible to discriminate against a company based on its past performance. I mean, how do we issue out contracts if we're not looking at past performance?
Yeah, it's a big problem which raises a couple of questions. One, as Kate says, that you can have a situation in which you're not allowed to consider past performance, but it secondly builds on some of our other reporting which shows that Fujitsu continued to receive about $4 billion worth of government contracts after 2019. So after they had been defeated in a court case in which a judge likened the post office's behaviour in this scandal to believing that the earth was flat. And so I think, you know...
And also after Fujitsu was suing.
After Fujitsu was suing. I mean, yeah, so it's ridiculous. You'd think that you'd be able to both consider past performance, but also whether or not someone is suing you with one hand and taking your business with the other. So actually suing you with your own money, in a sense. But, I mean, I think, you know... The handling of the post office scandal, none of our three major parties in England come out of it well. Labour, of course, were in office when the Horizon scheme was introduced. Coalition, Liberal Democrat ministers were the post office ministers during the final years of the scandal. And, of course, the Conservatives have the fact that they kept coming back for more business afterwards. But I suspect that, as is often the case with scandals in which no parties emerge well, it will be the party when the music stopped. In this case, the Conservatives, who I think will probably have the most difficult time of it.
And we read that the company this week, former executives, will be brought in front of the public inquiry. So we will get to hear from them this week, it seems, on that story. Let's have a look at The Guardian next. NHS drug shortage poses threat to patients' lives. This sounds incredibly serious, according to pharmacists. Okay.
Yes, it certainly is. It's around 100 drugs that were on the shortages list on the 30th of October, 111, down to 96 by the 18th of December. But that is still, a worryingly high number. A treatment for controlling epileptic seizures has just been added. As always, there are going to be a lot of culprits around this. The Guardian mentions Brexit and what's happened to the pound since. It would be ridiculous to say that Brexit has had no impact on trade or getting all kinds of goods, including medicines, into the country. Of course it has, but I think there's something much larger at play here. If you actually break down the details of the article, it also talks about the government's policy of taxing manufacturers. That's something that we control in Whitehall. But most importantly, NHS spending in real terms is up significantly. I mean, it is the highest it's been in real terms since the government came in 2010. We have a situation where more money than ever is going into the NHS, and yet productivity is still an extreme problem. You have to wonder if every pound is being spent efficiently. Dealing with these shortages is not something only the UK is dealing with, but I think there are so many issues facing the NHS right now. Brexit may be one of them. I don't think it's anywhere near the top of the list.
OK, just because of time, we're going to move on, Stephen, to The Telegraph again, and then this political story that I know you're both keen to talk about, and the Tories potentially facing a 1997-style wipeout. Is that a surprise, Stephen?
Well, I'm afraid I rather sarcastically off-air asked if this was a multi-agency investigation and had led to this front page. I mean, I think it's pretty obvious to everyone who looks at the results of the elections or goes out and speaks to swing voters that people are pretty angry with the Conservatives. Now, yes, this style of polling has been very successful in recent elections, but really all it does is tell us the same thing as the polls. Now, if I were in the Labour Party, the reason why I would feel optimistic is I would look at the various crises facing the government and think they're unlikely to have improved much. But if I were the government, I would look at the fact that this poll does suggest that 1 in 10 people are going to vote reform, which is much better than they have done in any of the actual by-elections or local elections in the the last year. And I would hope, if I were the Conservatives, then that might be the difference between this level of wipeout, which almost certainly precludes any quick return, and something, you know, slightly more manageable that they might walk off after 5 years of opposition.
Kate, do you agree that this doesn't particularly paint a 100% disaster for the Conservatives?
No poll can you lean on to say that there's a 100% guarantee of anything, but as
well, we know that very well.
We know that too well, so certainly not. But as Stephen says, this seems to be in line with, I think, a narrative that doesn't just come from polling, but comes from all kinds of factors, suggesting that the Tories are in for a long uphill battle this year before the election.
We shall see. Thank you both, Kate and Stephen, for the moment. Do stay with us. Let's take a look at the weather for you now.
Warm memories wherever you go. The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Well, an Arctic flow will make it cold this week, with snow for some and risk of ice. There'll be a widespread sharp frost at first tomorrow, with sleet and snow showers running into northern, eastern and Irish Sea coastal areas exposed to the raw northerly wind. Expect some icy stretches, especially following any showers. Inland areas will be mainly dry and sunny through the morning, but the biting northerly wind will bring further snow showers to windward coasts. It'll be cold everywhere, with some northern and eastern parts freezing all day. The afternoon will bring little overall change, although snow showers in the northwest will spread further inland for a time. Tuesday looks like bringing further snow showers to northern Scotland and a spell of more prolonged rain.
The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Coming up next on Sky News at 11, the latest from Iceland, where lava flowing from a new volcanic eruption is destroying homes.